Hi folks, it's Will Preston from the RideShare Guy. It's been a minute since I've done anything for the site, so I'm excited to do this. The question is, does it make sense to rent a Tesla through Uber and Hertz in order to drive for Uber? And this is one of those where it's going to be a giant it depends. So first, I just wanted to give you a review of what the process was like, and then I'll talk about what the car was like, and then, my thoughts overall. I will say that if you note, I'm actually filming this from a Tesla, which is now my Tesla, which I bought as a result of this rental. I do really like the Tesla. That's a whole other discussion. But that was the reason I was renting from Uber and Hertz, is that I had a Prius. My Prius was, a little long in the tooth. It had 220,000 miles on it. And I was considering replacing it with a Model 3. And I wasn't sure, would it work as a rideshare car? I know some people did it. It just seemed to me to be a little too expensive, etc. And so could I make it work as a rideshare car? So I signed up with Uber to go down to the Hertz facility by the San Diego airport to pick up a rental Uber. I made an appointment for, I believe it was 11 o'clock in the morning, which is normally when I would start driving on a Friday. And that was my mistake, because little did I know that it would take me 4.5 hours to pick up the car. When you get to, and by the way, since I've commented about this online, I've gotten comments from other drivers around the country that say that they've had a similar experience, although not everybody said that. Some people said they actually had a decent experience. But in my case, and many other people's case, basically, I think it's that Hertz knows they have a captive audience, that those who are renting these cars don't really have another choice. There is no other way to rent a car to drive for Uber. And so they know that, you can't just go over to Avis or something, right? There's this exclusive arrangement. And so I just don't think that they staff it properly to meet the demand, because it took me 4.5 hours to pick up my car. And then also, once I picked up the car, it wasn't a fully functioning car. There were some things like the car was filthy. Not inside. Inside was fine, but outside was just completely filthy. They clearly hadn't washed it since the last driver. And that would normally never be the case at a rental car company. And if it was the case, they would apologize extremely and say, we're really so sorry, but we're too busy or something. They would apologize. These folks, they just didn't care. The car also didn't have washer fluid in it. So I had to go out and buy washer fluid for my rental car so that I could clean my windshield. And then I'd say my biggest complaint was the cruise control, which is referred to as autopilot. Autopilot has 3 phases. The base autopilot is basically intelligent cruise control. It wouldn't work because there was some camera alignment problem. If you tried to activate it, it would say that it couldn't activate because of a camera alignment problem. And the reason that was really disappointing to me was I was really curious to see how good the base autopilot was. That was one of the main reasons I was renting the car. And so I tried to get them to address it. I tried tech support. I tried, Tesla tech support wouldn't talk to me because I'm not the owner of the car. Hertz tech support couldn't connect me with Tesla tech support. Long story short, I spent 3 hours on the phone trying to fix this, only to be told, well, you just have to take it back to the rental agency. So I took it back to the rental agency, and their response was, look, literally, this is a direct quote, look, we can't be responsible for everything working on the car. Okay, if not you, who? And so then he told me that if I wanted to swap out cars, that I'd have to turn in my car, wait 48 hours, then pick up another car, and there would be no guarantee that the other car would be working, which is basically look, we're just going to make it super inconvenient, and you're probably not going to get what you want, so just go away, which is what I did. When I returned the car a week later, oh, by the way, the way charging works is that the charging account for the Tesla is tied to Hertz. And so when you're done, you get a bill for the charging through Hertz. And so I brought the car back and I got the Tesla, the charging bill from Hertz. And also they complained that the car was dirty. This time they were talking about inside. And yes, the car had evidence of passengers having been there, because I rented hundreds of rental cars in my life. Never once have I thought, I'm gonna vacuum out the back seat, the back floor, before I return my rental car, because every rental car is vacuumed in between renters. And so I really didn't even think about that. They then proceeded to charge me a $75 cleaning fee, which I did consult the contract. It's not in the contract. The only cleaning fee in the contract is if you smoke in the car. I contacted Hertz corporate. They actually waived the fee. So and it took me 3 hours to return the car. 3 hours to return the car. So 4.5 hours to pick it up, 3 hours on tech support, another hour to and from this rental facility to see if I can get that fixed, and 3 hours to rent the car. So overall, the experience on a 1 to 10 was a 0. It was just a horrible experience. It was $375 a week, plus the charging, of course. And the one nice thing about it is that it lowers your deductible to $1,000, right? The Uber and Lyft deductible is $2,500. It lowers it to $1,000. That's one nice thing about it, given that you're driving such an expensive car. So that's sort of the rental experience. I cannot recommend the rental experience, but that is really something that you should only have to deal with on the front end and the back end. And if you're renting it long term, maybe you can overlook that. So then the question is, what about the car? The car was and is great. My experience was good enough that I decided to buy one for myself, and now it's going to be my Uber and Lyft car. The charging experience, basically you charge it before you leave. You can charge it at a supercharger near your house, or you can charge it at your house. You leave with a full charge, and generally, even when I was driving a full shift of 12 hours, I could drive it long enough that then I would do a charge at a supercharger somewhere else while I was out and about. I was never where I live, I'm never more than 10 or 15 minutes from a charger. You pull into the charger, you top it off to 80% in 20 minutes. You take a break, you sit here and watch Netflix on a really nice screen, browse the web, whatever you want to do, take a break. I found zero inconvenience from the whole charging thing. The cost of the charging is also, even here in California, where the cost of electricity is 3 times what it is in other places in the country. So we're paying, the best rate I get at a supercharger, which is after 10 p.m., is 27 cents a kilowatt hour. The most expensive is 55 cents a kilowatt hour. Now, I tried very hard to stay away from charging it when it was that expensive, but I paid anywhere from 27 to say 40 cents a kilowatt hour for my charging. Even at that rate, it is still less expensive than gassing up my Prius and driving it for the same amount of distance. The range isn't really a concern. The base model, I can't fill it up and drive it for an entire 12-hour shift, but that's really just not an issue because it only takes 20 minutes to top it off. And it's just easier to drive. The Tesla's just such a great car. So I don't have any issues with the car itself. In fact, I love the car. I love everything about the Tesla, just all of the features that come with it, but I'm not going to waste too much time on that here. So I love driving the Tesla as an Uber vehicle. And so then the question is, what should you do? Does this make sense? I do think that driving a Tesla for Uber and Lyft really makes sense in the long run, right? Both companies have a financial incentive to get you to drive an EV. The Uber pays $1 a ride extra. Lyft, I think, has a much better deal right now. If you do 50 rides in a week, then you get $150 per week to pay for your Tesla. That's around $650 a month that you get to make the Tesla. With my down payment, and I did a 72-month, loan on this car, my payment is way less than the $650 a month. So that's amazing, right? At least for the first year. That only goes up to $8,100. But the Uber is $1 per ride, not as good as the Tesla one, unless you're doing 600 rides a month, which is a lot of rides. In which case you could actually make more with Uber. And also it is less expensive to drive and definitely operate. There's no oil changes, and the brake changes would be much less frequently, or much less frequent than a gas car. If you don't understand that, it's because you rarely use your brakes. You use regenerative braking, and you rarely touch the actual brake pedal. So your brakes should actually last for a really, really long time. And so just overall, it costs less expensive to operate than a gas car, and it is great to drive. It's fun to drive. And so I think it makes a lot of sense to use a base model Tesla as an Uber or Lyft vehicle. As to whether or not it makes sense to do the rental, that is a completely different question. I will say that I looked at both the Uber and Lyft rentals. Lyft has an EV rental. It's more expensive. Like they charge, I think it was like $475 a week, and then, or $450 a week. But if you did a lot of rides, then they would take like $90 off of that. So after the incentives, it was down to about $375 a week, which is the cost of the Uber program, just straight up, without any fancy incentive business. But with the Lyft one, you're not renting a Tesla, you're getting a Kia or something like that. So I'm like, I'm gonna spend $475 a week to not rent a Tesla. No thanks. $375 a week, I'm renting a Tesla. That sounds great. The question is whether or not that makes financial sense. I'll just say this. I don't think it makes financial sense unless you're a full-time driver. Because, for example, if I was paying $375 a week for this car, and I'm only driving and making, let's say, $500-600 on a weekend, which is sort of a normal weekend if there's not a lot of boost or extra incentives, basically I'm going to spend 3/4 of my pay on the car. And that's, by the way, that's even without the charging. By the way, then I have to pay for the charging. And by the way, it cost me about $90, I think it was, for the charging for the week. So now I'm at $470 for a week. And so if I'm driving that on a weekend, I think it makes absolutely no sense, just too expensive. But if you're a full-time driver and you're willing to understand that, your first 2 days of driving is going to be to pay for the car, and then you've got 3 days where you can just go crazy, then maybe it makes sense for you. What is really nice about it is that you're easy in, easy out. You can try it for a week like I did, see how it works for you, and then bring the car back and you're done. Yes, it might take you many hours to do that. But that's the best part about it, is that it's not a credit check. So if you have questionable credit and you're not able to get a car, then it makes a lot of sense. I think, though, if you're in that situation, what I would probably do is rent a different car through Hertz, because they're less expensive, not terribly less expensive, but less expensive than the Tesla. And I don't think that the price difference in terms of gas versus electricity makes up the difference for you. But that math may be different in your area based on the price of gas and the price of electricity. Here, like I said, it's about, I'm going to say about 70% of the cost of gas versus electric if you drive the car conservatively. So there you go. So my summary is thumbs up on the Tesla, thumbs down on the Hertz rental experience. It was absolutely horrible. And then a giant it depends on whether or not it makes sense to deal with that, setting that aside. It's an it depends, but I really think that it only makes sense if you're a full-time Uber driver. So I hope that was helpful. And with that, again, I'm Will Preston from the RideShare Guy.